Thank you to everyone joining us. If you're here in the Zoom with us, let us know your name and where you're from in the chat so we can shout you out. Also, you can help us get the word out by sharing this broadcast on your own social media channels like Facebook and Twitter, so we can bring more people into the conversation. The links to share this broadcast are being dropped in the chat now. Make sure you guys keep up with it. I will do my best to keep up with the chat and everyone that joins us. As we head into 2022, we have a lot of work to do. We must defend our democracy against far-right attacks, organize to pass a real working class agenda, and mobilize to elect progressives up and down the ballot. And as you all know, we need your help to make that happen. I can see now in the chat, Tommy has joined us from Pennsylvania. We have Santana joining us from South Carolina. Z joining us. Paco's here with us. Mike is here with us. Deb Robinson from Vermont joining us. Let's see. We also have Melvin Ford joining us from Trenton, New Jersey. So there's a lot of work to do, y'all, and each one of us need to put our hands to help that make that happen. These are trying times, and you all know we can't do it alone. That's why I want to invite each of you to become an Our Revolution dues paying member so that we continue the work that we started all throughout these past 4 to 5 years and make 22 one of our strongest years. For as little as $5 to $10 a month, you can help us take the right-wing authoritarians on and take on the corporate establishment. We are working for progressives and pushing the progressive message. If you're in the Zoom room right now, you can click on the link below, ourrev.us/2022 member, and that'll help you become a dues-paying, supporting member of Our Revolution. We thank each and every one of you for helping us organize across the nation. If you're listening to us on your cell phone and you'd like to become a dues-paying member, you can do so by pressing *3 and an operator will take your information. Please tell us in the chat if you signed up to be a member. We'd love to shout you out. So I can see here in the chat as it strolls, we have Amanda Wolf joining us from Houston. Shout out to Houston, all my Texas folks. We have a great Texas people on the call tonight. Carol joining us from Cali. We have Lloyd joining us from South Orange, New Jersey. Let's see, Sandra from Arizona. Fred Mayer from Sherman, Texas. Wow, Sherman, been there lots of times. Judith joining us from Tubac, Arizona. Diane joining us from Cleveland. Hi, Diane, good to see you tonight. Elizabeth Dolman from San Leandro, California. We have Alan joining us from South Carolina, Stephen from Illinois, and Burton from Cleveland, Ohio. The chat is so important, y'all, to join us there because you'll see other people from your state. You can connect with other organizers and other progressives so we can continue the work. That's the best way to join us. If you want to join us in the Zoom, you can visit us at you just go to ourrev, OURREV.us/Zoom, and that'll take you directly into the Zoom app. It's super easy for you to join us that way. That way you can participate not just in the chat, but with each other. We encourage that, and that's why we are organizing. For those listening to us on your cell phones or watching live on social media, please, if you're able to, transfer to the Zoom room for a more interactive experience. I can see here in the chat, we have Thomas Goodfellow joining us from New York. We have Bruce joining us from Coral Springs, Florida. Donna from Canton, Ohio. Christy from Corpus Christi, Texas. Love Corpus Christi. Good to see you here. Nancy joining us from Rhode Island. Let's see. We have Larry K joining us from Burlington, Vermont. Good to see you, Larry. Let's see. Wendy joining us from Arizona. Barry from Ohio is a sustaining member. Thank you, Barry. Thank you to all our sustaining members. We appreciate every contribution made to us. Sharon joining us from Krieg, Columbus, Indiana. I'm sorry, Shara Krieg joining us from Columbus, Indiana. We also have Judith joining us. It's jumping a little, so I'm going to try to keep up with it. I apologize, y'all. Judith joining us from Texas, I thought I saw. Let's see who else. Liz joining us from Spring Hill, Florida. Pamela from Cambridge, Massachusetts. We're going to do a time check, y'all. The call will begin in just a few. Again, my name is Christy Lara. I'm joining you with the Our Revolution National Team. We have an exciting call tonight. Tonight, Congressional Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal will be joining us for the latest on the fight for progressive policies in Congress. Two of our Revolution Texas congressional candidates. I'm from Texas, y'all. I'm a little biased there. Jasmine Crockett will be joining us, as well as Greg Casar, rock stars. You guys want to hear from these two people? They will join us to talk about the work that we're doing in Texas to grow the progressive movement. We want you to stay tuned and hear from City Council candidate Chito Vela and Travis County Commissioner candidate Bob Libal on how we're making change from the bottom up. As we get ready to start the call, please, again, tell us your name, where you're from in the chat, and also connect with each other. I want to give a big welcome. The call is about to begin. Again, you can join us by going to ourrev.us/Zoom to get directly in the chat. And Joseph, I'm going to lead the call off with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy Laura with Our Revolution Texas. So wonderful to have you join us on tonight's call. Good evening to everyone out there, and welcome to our regular Monday night Organized to Win broadcast. My name is Joseph Givargis. I'm the Executive Director of Our Revolution. I'll be your co-host tonight, along with Aaron Chappell, who is our National Political Director. Our regular Monday night call is an opportunity for all of us as engaged citizens in the public square to gather together as a progressive community to strategize and organize about how we make America a more perfect union. And by that, I mean a more progressive union. Tonight, we're going to talk about our ongoing fight to win progressive policies in Washington, D.C., with the one, the only Pramila Jayapal, chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. We're also going to talk about our plan to grow progressive power on Capitol Hill by electing Our Revolution members to the United States House. Tonight, we're going to be joined by two of our endorsed candidates, the first two progressive champions that we're putting up for Congress, Jasmine Crockett and Greg Casar, who are running for Congress from Texas. And last but not least, we're going to talk about our critical work to build progressive power at the local level with our endorsed candidate for Austin, Texas City Council, Chito Vela, and our endorsed candidate for Travis County Commissioner, Bob Libal. Brothers and sisters, this is going to be an exciting call, and I want everyone here to fully participate in our virtual community. If you're joining by phone and you want to have a more interactive experience, you can transfer into the Zoom room. Just go to ourrevolution.us/Zoom. Again, ourrevolution.us/Zoom. Before we bring up our guests, I want to spend a moment talking about some of the top lines that are making up our 2022 plan to win. As we head into the midterms, we know that Democrats are facing a lot of headwinds. But even if Democrats lose, it doesn't mean that we as progressives have to lose. In 2022, we as a progressive movement still have the opportunity to grow our power and to advance our mission. On our last Monday night call, we reflected on making resolutions to one another as we begin to organize to win in 2022. Tonight, we want to lay out 4 of the top resolutions that we as an Our Revolution community are making in order to win going forward. Aaron, tell us resolution number 1.
Thanks, Joseph, and it's great to be here. Really excited about this call tonight. So our first resolution, defending democracy. January 6th raised fundamental questions about the state of our constitutional democracy. Is this going to be a country governed by the rule of law or mob violence? To defend our democracy, we've got to counter right-wing radicals who rebelled against this country. That's why our revolution joined forces with Free Speech for People to call on state elections officials to uphold Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which bars any elected official who incited insurrection from running for office ever again. Who would have thought a amendment dealing with the Civil War would be so pertinent in 2022? We kicked off our campaign by filing our first legal complaint challenging U.S. Representative Madison Cawthorn, a Trump-supporting insurrectionist from North Carolina, and we're just getting started. So our revolution members are planning rallies against Scott Perry in Pennsylvania, Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia, Lauren Boebert in Colorado, Paul Gosar in Arizona, and others like them who has to be held accountable for what they've done to this country. If anybody doubts the merits of the case, check out the op-ed from yesterday's New York Times Sunday Review, where former Deputy Assistant U.S. Attorney General Harry Litman said our challenge is, quote, no joke. We've got a strong case and Mr. Cawthorn would be foolish to take it lightly. The link to that op-ed is getting dropped in the chat so you can see for yourselves. And if you want to do your part defending democracy, we're going to do a training on Wednesday night for folks who want to learn how to file these complaints. The link is also getting dropped in the chat for Mobilize. And Joseph, over to you to tell us about the second resolution.
So the second thing that we've got to do in 2022 is this. We've got to organize to defeat the enemies of progress. I want to say it one more time. We got to organize to defeat the enemies of progress. Look, the truth is that we've got to fight on two fronts. We not only have to defeat insurrectionists and take out Republicans, we also have to defeat the enemies of progress who are within our own party. Just last week, two Democrats, Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, sided with Republicans once again to uphold the filibuster and block voting rights. Not only are they conspiring with Republicans to suppress the vote, they're also standing in the way of the American people getting universal pre-K, getting lower prescription drug prices, and getting real action on climate change. Brothers and sisters, if we're going to win in 2022 and beyond, we need to draw a line. Any Democrat who undermines the Democratic agenda must be sidelined. This week, Bernie said that he supports primary challenges against corporate Democrats like Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. And you know what, brothers and sisters? So do we. That's why our revolution has launched our primary fund to take out the senator from Arizona and replace her with a true progressive. If you want to contribute and help us build up our ground game, you can go to the link in the chat. Back to you, Aaron.
So it's not just Manchin and Sinema either. You remember the problems caused by House members like Henry Cuellar in Texas, Kurt Schrader in Oregon, plenty of others that were holding up our agenda all last year. That's why we need to rally the progressive movement behind challengers like Jessica Cisneros, who we'd like to officially announce we're endorsing right now. Let's be clear who Jessica is running against. Henry Cuellar is the only Democrat in the House who voted against the PRO Act, the only one. He wrote a letter to Speaker Pelosi asking her to expand, not reduce, fossil fuel subsidies. And then last week, his house was raided by the FBI. So getting rid of corrupt corporatists like Cuellar and adding an excellent progressive like Jessica Cisneros is how we can dramatically start to alter the composition of Congress in our favor. Over to you, Joseph.
Thanks, Aaron. Let's talk about the third thing we got to do to win in 22. We've got to strengthen the progressive voting bloc in Congress. Again, strengthen the progressive voting bloc in Congress. You know what? Joe Manchin said it himself. If we want more progressive policies, we've got to elect more progressives. All right, Senator Manchin, we're taking you up on that. The key to achieving federal policy change is increasing the number of progressives who serve in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. Our marching orders are clear. We need to replace retiring Democrats and fill open seats with bold progressives. Tonight, we're excited to announce our endorsement of two Our Revolution members, the first 2022 progressive champions that we're putting up for Congress, Greg Casar and Jasmine Crockett, two Texans who are vying to represent all of us in Congress. Aaron, take us to resolution number 4.
Yeah, our last of the 4 resolutions, we've got to keep electing down ballot progressives. The right wing understands this strategy too well, building power up and down the ballot. Steve Bannon said in May last year that the path to save the nation is going to go through the school boards. Let's hope that the path is not the one Steve Bannon imagines, but our revolution members are organizing locally to stake out progressive power in their communities to counter the Tea Party Trump influence at the most basic foundational levels of government. This week, for example, our Revolution San Francisco Bernie-crats held a town hall, actually just last week, to take a stand against the recall of progressive school board candidates there. We're not going to let the far right pull back the gains we've made. We're going to keep building the bench, defend progressives at every level on the ballot. To watch a YouTube video, a recording of that meeting, the link is getting dropped in the chat right now. On the other side of the country, in New York, our Revolution and the New York Progressive Action Network just held a forum to hear from Democratic candidates in the governor's race. While New York public advocate Jumaane Williams showed up and talked about single payer and other progressive policies. He's a longtime friend of our Revolution and NIPAN. The current governor, Kathy Hochul, sent a surrogate, didn't quite have the same perspective on the issues we were asking about. The link for that recording is also getting dropped in the chat. And Joseph, go back to you. That's our resolutions.
Thank you again, Aaron. Again, we have important work to do as we organize to win a progressive America in 2022. Our rock star lineup of guests really exemplify our strategy of how we're going to carry out and keep our resolutions to one another and to the American people. With voting rights and Build Back Better stalled at the federal level, it's clear now more than ever that we've got to do more to elect progressives to serve in Congress, and we've got to do more to strengthen the Congressional Progressive Caucus. That's why we're excited tonight to have United States Representative Pramila Jayapal, the chair of the CPC, to talk with us about our strategy for the year to come. We've got thousands of people who are on the phones right now. And if you want to ask a question and directly engage with Representative Pramila Jayapal, please transfer into the Zoom room. You can just go to rrev.us/Zoom. For folks who are on the phones and want to stay on the phones, if you've got a question, hit *3 and an operator will take it down. Representative Jayapal, thank you so much for being with us. There's so much that's happening in Washington. Excited to get your take. Let's start with voting rights. What is happening and how do we overcome the obstructionist United States Senate?
Well, Joseph, first of all, thank you so much for everything that our revolution is doing. I am really honored to be here with you and in community with this powerful moment, with this powerful movement. And just to say what a critical moment we're in and how important the work that you're doing to elect more progressives like the fantastic Texas members that I know you're going to endorse tonight is for our country and our democracy. And I'll get to your question on voting rights, but I just want to start by saying I'm an organizer. For people on the phone, on the Zoom that don't know me, that's my background. And the only reason I ran after being an activist for 20 years on the outside was because I believed that something different was possible inside, that we could use our elected platforms to organize for more power, for the things that we know are necessary to accomplish justice, real justice. That was my theory of change. And that's why what the movement does to elect more progressives who are willing to stand up and be courageous, because courage begets more courage, and to actually build our institutions on the inside, to coordinate our movement tables and to do the kinds of things that we know are necessary. That is really, really important work. And I just want to highlight that, because I think when I got here to Congress back in 2017, we had to spend 5 years rebuilding the Progressive Caucus, work that had started before with Keith Ellison, Raul Grijalva, and others, but really important that we continue to build our margins in the House and the Senate, right? Because yes, we have majorities, but we don't have enough of our majorities to get the work done in the Senate. And that goes to your question about voting rights. The reality is that the Progressive Caucus led the campaign to eliminate the filibuster starting early last year. And we actually did a whole bunch of education all the way through about why it was so essential for us to eliminate the filibuster, which is a Jim Crow legacy that has just been kept there in order to stop civil rights progress. And I don't want people to forget that we made enormous progress. The movement, the collective movement did, because last year at this time, there were more than 2 Democratic senators who didn't believe that we should do a carve out for voting rights. Now we are at least down to 2 Democratic senators that don't believe we should do a carve out. And of course, 50 Republican senators who have no interest whatsoever in getting rid of the filibuster. So what do? It was absolutely the right thing to bring the voting rights bill up in the Senate for a debate. And it was the right thing. The House had already passed the voting rights bills, both of them, early last year. We passed another shell bill where we put the 2 together, sent them over again to the Senate so that we could bypass the procedural filibuster that even stops a debate. What kind of a US Senate do we have when you stop even debate on voting rights bills? So the strategy now has to be that we try to continue to get everything we can done legislatively. We work at the state level and the local level to try and do as much as possible there. And we get enough votes in the Senate so that we can ultimately get rid of the filibuster. It's really all of those things have to happen at the same time. And we're putting together our voting rights strategy in the Progressive Caucus to keep up the drumbeat. Because as Reverend Barber reminded us earlier on a call that I was in, our deadline is victory. That is our deadline. Our deadline is victory. It is not tied to a specific date when a piece of legislation does or doesn't pass. It is tied to victory. And we don't have the luxury to give up. So we're going to continue to fight for voting rights and also to increase our margins in the House and the Senate so that we have people who are ready to get that done.
That's right, Congresswoman. And you talked there about, at the top of your remarks, about inside outside game. Our Revolution members have been partners with the CPC over the fight to get Build Back Better over the finish line. We did actions at offices of corporate Democrats who were opposed to the president's agenda. We went after senators. That being said, given where Build Back Better is, the obstructionism that it faced, what's our strategy inside and outside for moving key elements forward?
Yeah, thanks for that. And I just want to back up a little bit and just talk about how we got here. And let's be honest about it. Last spring, the CPC, the Progressive Caucus, called for one comprehensive bill to deliver the president's agenda. But seeking a show of bipartisanship, the White House, at the urging of conservative Democratic senators, split the legislation into 2 vehicles, which eventually became the infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better Act. And the Build Back Better Act has 85% of the president's domestic agenda. And so the effect of that decision was to push Build Back Better and all the communities that it would uniquely benefit to the back of the line. And then when the Senate passed the infrastructure bill in a bipartisan way with every Democratic senator voting for it, the pressure really came down to the House and to the Progressive Caucus to hold the line. We did. We held the line twice. 2 times we said we are not bringing the bill to the floor, even though our own leadership was pushing for the bill and the White House was pushing for the bill. And 1/3 very long night where we finally inked the deal that got us the legislative text and that got us all of the Democratic votes in the House, except for one Democrat who didn't vote for it. And we passed it out of the House. Now, that is the point at which Senator Manchin went back on his commitment to the president and the president's commitment to us that he was going to vote for that framework. So where we are now is that the president is, the attention has to move back to Build Back Better. And we are really trying to figure out, and you can help us, all of the ways in which we can elevate Build Back Better, particularly for the next 4 weeks. For the next 4 weeks, sort of leading up to the State of the Union, is the time frame we have to try to get as much of Build Back Better passed as possible. It's not, if you hear talk about breaking it into different bills, forget about that. That's not what's, because we're using reconciliation to do this, which is a wonky process. That's why everything is put into one bill, because we can only do it once. So our goal is to get as close as possible to the framework that Senator Manchin committed, that had almost all of our progressive priorities in it, and to make sure that that is the bill that moves forward before March 1st. And I think that it is doable, and I'll tell you why I think it's doable. There is actually more agreement than it may seem on a lot of the parts of the bill. Senator Manchin supports the climate pieces. He supports universal childcare, where no family pays more than 7% of their income on childcare. He supports universal pre-K. He supports taking on big pharma. He supports the subsidies so that people can get health care that they need. These are all critical priorities of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and the kinds of things that we need to deliver on to get real relief back to people. So I really believe, and also it may not be his pet issue, but he's not opposed to the housing piece, the $150 billion that we secured of investment into housing across the country. So that is our focus, and anything you and your members can do to turn up the heat again, and to say to the White House, this is the moment to pivot back to Build Back Better. The president has a unique responsibility because he's the one that got the commitment from Senator Manchin to that framework. And so we want to do everything we can to help the president push Senator Manchin, and of course, to push all the senators and all of the, of course, all of the people in West Virginia to be able to share their story with Senator Manchin. But I believe, Joseph, that we can get this done, but it is going to require us making sure that everybody understands we've turned our focus back to Build Back Better, and it's going to be about a month that is the time frame that is most likely for us to get this piece of legislation done.
And again, Congresswoman, tell us why March 1st is the deadline.
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking me that very basic question. I didn't really give that, did I? March 1st is the State of the Union that the president is going to deliver to Congress. And if you remember, Joseph, it was the State of the Union last year when the president laid out his vision. Build Back Better is his vision. It is the president's agenda. It is what we all committed to deliver when we won the House, the Senate, and the White House. So our belief is that March 1st, look, time is not our friend in the legislative process. So March 1st is sort of the place where I know the president wants to be able to come to Congress and say, we delivered on these key pieces of Build Back Better. So there's kind of a unique little opportunity. Once we get past March 1st, it's not impossible, but it becomes very difficult to have people continue to believe that we're going to get something done. When the bill is drafted, all that needs to happen is the president needs to sit down with Senator Manchin and take out the things in the bill that he had not committed to in the framework that we added in the House. There were things that he did not agree to, and we understand that. So but we need his vote at least on the components of Build Back Better that were in the framework. And that's all the things I mentioned. It's the pre-K, it's the childcare, it's the elder care. I forgot to mention elder care. Very important to cut the waiting list of 800,000 people. This was part of the Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force on Healthcare that I co-chaired the year before, where we got this provision in to really focus on elder care as part of our journey to get Medicare for All done, that this was an essential piece. So these are all the critical priorities that I still think we can get done and Build Back Better. We just need to do it quickly.
So in order for progressives to win in 2022, we've got to do everything we can to remove the procedural roadblocks, address voting rights, and we have to materially deliver for the American people. What you're saying to us as partners on the outside is we should push the president to deliver on Build Back Better by the State of the Union. One last question in terms of executive action, right? So the president's got the bully pulpit. He can lead by leaning on members of Congress, but he can also lead with the power of the pen. What should we be pushing for in this moment?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked about this because this is really important. So yes, we're going to keep working for Build Back Better through legislation in Congress, and we're completely committed to passing that. But there are things that the president can do right now to deliver on his agenda and make a difference in people's lives. Things that expand access to healthcare, lower costs for working people, and meet the demand of the climate crisis. So just as an example, we've been calling on the president for months now to fulfill his campaign promise and to cancel some level of student loans. He doesn't need any senators to do that. He can do that with a stroke of his pen. And the moratorium on student loan payments is going to expire shortly, and we want him to do that right away. But also, we have gone through in the Progressive Caucus, and we have worked on an agenda that I think we'll be able to unveil pretty soon. That is a set of executive actions, things like using march-in rights to bring down the cost of pharmaceutical drugs. That could be done through executive action. It won't be everything that we could get through legislation, but it'll be a start. There are pieces around collective bargaining and workers' rights that we know we can get done. There are pieces around climate change and specific executive actions that the president could take around power plant emissions standards and other emissions standards and fossil fuel subsidies, getting rid of fossil fuel subsidies. Some of those things can be done through executive action. So we have prepared a list that we are in the process of vetting with our executive board and with the entire CPC, and we hope to roll those out relatively quickly. And again, to be focused and clear in our messaging that people who think they can just delay and obstruct Build Back Better out of existence have another thing coming, because we are going to deliver on this agenda one way or another, either legislatively or through executive action. And that is absolutely our commitment.
That's right. Otherwise, the president's not going to have much to talk about at the State of the Union. He's got to deliver for the American people. Pramila, Jayapal, thank you for joining us tonight. We have our marching orders. Our members are going to keep pushing on the outside as you and other progressives push on the inside. Change takes time. It takes organizing, but we know it's going to happen. Again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Just don't forget that if politics is the art of the possible, then it is our job as activists and progressives to push the boundaries of what is seen as possible. So thank you all so much for doing that. Thanks for these great candidates that you're going to endorse tonight. We're looking forward to more progressives in the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
Thank you again, Congresswoman. You heard what she said. We've got to elect more progressives if we want to enact our progressive policy agenda. Brothers and sisters, even though there are obstacles to Democrats winning, progressives can advance. But in order to do that, we need your support. Our revolution is completely grassroots funded. I want you to become a member of our revolution today and help us elect the next generation of Progressive Champions to United States Congress. Link is in the chat. And with that, I want Aaron to introduce one of the Progressive Champions that we're going to see in the U.S. House alongside Pramila Jayapal.
That's right, Joseph. Our members in Texas have voted to endorse a slate of progressive champions here tonight, and we've got a number of them with us. And I am thrilled to be the person who gets to announce first that we are, as of this moment, endorsing Greg Casar for U.S. Congress for the 35th district in Texas. I had the pleasure of working with this guy in a campaign for living wages and better working conditions for construction workers in Austin, Texas, some years back. I know he's a real fighter for justice. He's the real deal. Greg is an Our Revolution member who has proven himself as a progressive champion in his time in the Austin City Council. He's also been endorsed by the Congressional Progressive Caucus PAC, among others. And Greg, welcome. You just stepped down from your council seat to run. Tell us what's going on.
Hi, Aaron, and hey, Our Revolution. Thank you all so much for your endorsement. I'm just coming off of the doors, which is why it's dark where I am. We were just out knocking doors, ran into my car to hop onto this call with you all. And here in Texas, we're at ground zero, where during the pandemic, we had a Republican Supreme Court bend the law in a biased way, block the paid sick time law that we authored for Austin and for San Antonio and had passed. We're in the middle of this crisis that we've all faced with COVID-19. Our legislative leaders, like the governor, have focused on further banning abortion, where we have the vast majority of people having lost their right to abortion and reproductive rights in this state. They focused, instead of taking care of everyday people, they focused on tax cuts for corporations and on banning books. It is really just an awful state of affairs in our democracy here, but it isn't what the majority of working Texans believe. It's just the regime that we are currently under. When we had a winter storm that knocked out power and water for millions of Texans for days, and dozens of my constituents died in that freeze, we saw Ted Cruz get on a plane to the beach in the middle of that crisis, but everyday working Texans setting up warming stations, opening up high school gyms, taking care of one another. And that's the energy that we have here in Texas of folks that believe in a change. And so that's why I launched this run for Congress in a now open seat that is bound to be held by a Democrat. But the question is what kind of leader it is we are going to get. And coming from labor organizing, coming from pushing for progressive policy and taking on attacks from the corporate right wing, I know that this isn't just about me going to Congress, but about bringing our entire community to Congress, being able to bring the organizing energy and drive from Texas to the entire South and to our country. And that's something I know that we've been able to do, working alongside one another as Our Revolution members, working alongside one another on progressive campaigns like Senator Sanders' presidential campaign, and something that I want to continue to do alongside you. So I've had the chance as a council member to block evictions during the pandemic and pass real eviction protections, to be able to raise the minimum wage for thousands of people, to be able to end all marijuana citations and arrests in Austin, even though marijuana remains criminalized in the state of Texas. But we know that we need to be able to bring real solutions, and so much of that comes at the federal level and from organizing with each other at the national level. So I'm going to continue this fight for the next few weeks. We're the first primary out the gate. The polls have us up, but we know that the attacks are coming. And so just would so appreciate whatever bit of help we can get from Our Revolution members, because that's always helped us get across the finish line. So thank you so very much for the endorsement.
That's awesome. So you were here actually not long ago, not as a candidate, but telling us about some of the success you've had on, particularly on criminal justice reform issues, creating a 911 mental health response system, beating back a Republican ballot measure that was trying to roll back some of the criminal justice reforms you guys have fought for. How are you getting your progressive messaging across in Texas? What are some of the planks to your platform you think that are resonating the most? And what kinds of opposition do you anticipate as well? Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, I think what's so important for folks to know is, last time I was with you all, there was a ballot measure trying to sort of be a backlash measure against the Black Lives Matter movement here that was polling well, that had tons, millions of dollars of Republican and corporate money behind it. But we were able to block that measure because we talked to voters directly at their door, and because we called voters and we were able to have a conversation with them, so that when they got scary mailers or these horrible TV ads, that we could actually have a conversation and show folks that there is a real path to saying we don't need to solve everything with jails and incarceration and militarism. We could actually take care of one another. And that's what the majority of people believe. You know, some folks have asked me, why leave city council where you can make such change, immediate change, and join a progressive minority in Congress? But that's the wrong question for us to be asking ourselves, because the vast majority of people, even in Texas, especially in Texas, believe in at least a $15 an hour minimum wage indexed to inflation, believe that we should be investing less in jails and more in jobs, believe that we should have health care for everyone, regardless of whether you lose your job or not, and that we shouldn't have these GoFundMes for basic life-saving medication. And that's how we won that ballot measure campaign that was driven by fear, because we can have real conversations with one another. And in this campaign, talking about canceling student debt, talking about taking good care of our veterans and our seniors, talking about Medicare for all, and tackling the climate crisis that caused that big freeze, that's connecting with people, because that's what the majority of people in this country and a majority of people in Texas want. We just have to be able to make those connections. And so we're continuing to knock on doors and continuing to ask for volunteers' help making those phone calls, which I know which is what this group is so great at doing. And that's exactly how we're going to win this race.
Yeah, and that sounds like a great message. But you're right. We've got thousands of Our Revolution members in your district. We're going to be phone banking, texting, emailing, doing everything we can to get you over the finish line. So the next time you're back, we have you here as Congressman Casar. And, you know, tell folks if there's anything else they can do to support you. We're going to be dropping a link in the chat right now where folks can sign up to volunteer. So look for that. Any last message, Greg?
Yeah, you know, chipping in what you can helps a bunch. We are a union campaign, and so we make sure we take care of our staff. That's really what your donations are going to, is making sure our field program stays up and running. Volunteering your time, it helps a lot, because right now the polls have us up over 20 points, a real chance. But we know that the right wing and corporate interests that want this seat to be held by somebody that will do less with it, that they are going to start spending a ton of money just trying to smear our campaign. We've seen it time and time again. Actually, there are 2 polls we've captured in the field that basically just poll how many different lies they can tell to scare people about electing a true progressive in the seat. And so we need your help being able to combat those lies, so that these first primaries out the gate, this whole conversation that this is going to be a bad year for progressives and that things are going downhill, we can turn that around in these first primaries in Texas. All of the candidates that you have coming up here to be able to show that we can beat back those lies and fear, and we need your help to get that done.
Awesome. I see some folks saying in chat they just gave to your campaign. We'll get some volunteers out there and we're going to get this fight across the finish line. Thanks a lot, Greg. And Joseph, I'm going to cut straight back to you so we can get to our next candidate.
Great.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Greg. Look, not only are we committed to getting Greg over the finish line, we need an organizer like Greg in Congress. We've also got another shot to elect a progressive out of Texas. And I'm excited to announce our endorsement for yet another Our Revolution dues-paying member who's been a great progressive champion in the Texas House. Her name is Jasmine Crockett, and she's now running to represent all of us in the U.S. House. Jasmine, so wonderful that you can join us tonight. Tell us a little bit about why you decided to make a jump from the Texas House to the U.S. House in this moment.
I'm going to say, because clearly I'm a glutton for punishment. No, first of all, it is great to see y'all. I love Our Revolution. I love my brother, Greg. You know, I have been on the state level. This was kind of my freshman year. I say kind of because we went through about 4 sessions. So I feel as if I'm not really a freshman anymore. But, you know, it was a really bad time. I thought that this was an opportunity to do good, right? We're looking at a state that leads in uninsured. We have over 5 million people that are uninsured in the state of Texas. And then we ended up in this once in 100-year pandemic. So I said, oh, surely we'll expand upon access to healthcare. That only makes sense. People are dying. Wrong. I thought, well, we just experienced this crazy winter storm. Like, surely people finally understand that climate change is a real thing because Texas, of all states, is freezing. Wrong. Right? So then we decided, even after the El Paso shooting, not to do anything as it relates to guns, but, well, we did do something as it relates to guns. We decided to give everybody guns instead of actually reining in gun control and being smart about it. And so I grew frustrated. I was one of those that said, I don't understand why we're sitting here being beat up every single day. I get that we don't have the numbers, but we need to walk. And so the very first time that we talked about walking was as it relates to some of the anti-trans legislation that was coming through the Texas House. We led an anti-trans legislation in this country. And so that was when I first found out that there were members that really had gotten fed up and said, you know what, they don't respect us. They don't talk to us. They don't want to govern. They just want to run over us. And so we talked about what it would look like if we walked. Well, we ended up finding a way to kill that bill. And so we didn't have to walk. But I knew who was frustrated at that point. And so when it came down to voting rights in our very democracy, a democracy that is really crumbling before our eyes, that was the one thing that really did unite kind of the majority of all of the different parts of the Democratic Party that you have in the beautiful diversity of having a Democratic Party. And so I said, it's time for us to go. And leadership was not on board. And as Greg said, you know, the attacks come, especially when you're out ahead. We have a double-digit lead as well in this race. We just got our polling back, I think Friday before last. And so we are, you know, we're dealing with the drama, right? That comes with politics, and it's what makes real people decide that they don't want to be involved. But for me, the stakes are too high not to be involved. And that's exactly why I decided to run. I ran because I am a civil rights lawyer that has represented those families that have lost loved ones due to police brutality. I ran because I am a criminal defense attorney, former public defender, who would consistently walk into courtrooms and wonder why there was this disparity in the way that we treated certain people, or wondering why it is that we're still incarcerating certain people for possession of marijuana when other people in this country are absolutely becoming millionaires and billionaires. Like, it doesn't make logical sense to me. And so for me, I thought, because I live and work in the law every single day, if I can just explain to them how these things affect real lives. When we start talking about, you know, bail reform, and our governor decided that he wanted to make bail worse, he wanted to make it more difficult for people to actually get out of jail when they are just being charged with an offense, not necessarily convicted of an offense, but charged with an offense, and there's supposed to be a presumption of innocence. I thought that if I could tell them about Kevion, one of my clients who sat in jail for almost 2 years at the age of 17 years old because he was accused of capital murder as under the law of parties. And on the day of trial, they dismissed the case because they never had a case, but he lost 2 years of his life. And so he didn't graduate high school. I thought if they knew how our system worked in practice, that we could actually seek some kind of relief. Boy, was I wrong. But what I do know is that Texas is backwards. And sadly enough, we are leading the rest of the country down, right? We see Florida following us. We know that Arizona is looking at following us, Missouri, and so many other places. And so to me, the only option is on the federal level. That is why we went to DC. That is where the relief is. They need someone up there that knows exactly how they think down in the Texas legislature, someone that will make sure that we are counteracting the actions of the out of control Texas legislature, whether it's women's rights, whether it's gun rights, whether it's voting rights. I mean, you know, I don't know how many rights we're gonna have left. I mean, this was about a regression session instead of a progression session. And so I'm fighting for progress for all people. And sadly enough, they decided to attack pretty much everyone. Unbeknownst to me, my Congresswoman decided that she wanted to retire. She had been announcing that for about 10 years. But she called me, and she's a member of the Progressive Caucus. And at the tender age of 86, She said there's a new wave of leadership that is coming in. And I think you fit the mold of what that new age of leadership should look like, especially for District 30. And so she said, I am going to retire and I am going to endorse you. And she has been there by my side. And some people say she's 86, she's not progressive. And I try to tell them, y'all don't know that in the 70s, she was fighting for LGBTQ rights in the 70s, right? And so when she looks at me, she says things like, you remind me of the young version of me. And so I'm proud to be leading this pack, but literally I have a pack. So I have 8 opponents. So we need all the help that we can get, whether it's in the form of your love offering or whether it's in the form of your actual kind of time. We need whatever we can get. We can win this race. We are leading this race. But as Greg has already noted, the attacks, you know, the haters gonna hate. That's just what it is. So we know it's coming.
And we gotta keep organizing past.
Absolutely.
And Jasmine, your election's coming up March 1st, same days as Greg. Our Revolution members are going to be doing everything possible. We're going to be phone banking, texting. We're going to go all out to get you over the finish line because we want Eddie Bernice Johnson's seat. She's a member of the CPC. We want to make sure another CPC member gets there, and we want to make sure you get there. What's the message that you want to tell our group of activists and volunteers from around the country, both here on the Zoom room and on the phone lines? What's at stake? What do we need to do?
Well, what's at stake is one question, but I'm going to start off with thank you. We don't really get justice without demanding it. And that is what our revolution is known for, is organizing and making a demand. So I want to say thank you to each and every one of you that is an active member of this organization. You know, I thought that, you know, there wasn't a bottom as we were dealing with this session. I was like, it seems like we hit it. Nope, goes lower, right? The issue is that I don't really know how bad things will get unless we get real fighters. People that aren't concerned about the title, but people that are more concerned about the work. People that have a track record of actually working for the people, not people that are going to sit there and be somebody's puppet. We need people that are going to be strong and convicted and represent for their district. And so, you know, we are going into some really tough times. I am very concerned. And if we have people that are not willing to stand up and fight for what's right, then I don't really know where the bottom will be. We've seen people die every single day because of the mishandling of COVID-19. Right now, my district is so concerned about economic opportunities because they have almost dissipated while inflation is record high because supply chains are struggling once again because of COVID-19. We've got to get out of this hump, right? Like this slump that we're in. And we know that we needed to raise the minimum wage way before COVID came in. And now on top of that, we're dealing with the inflation. So we've got to have people that not only will fight, but have people that actually have the savvy and the understanding and the skill set. And those are things that I possess as a practicing lawyer for over 16 years in Texas, Arkansas, and federal courts. I understand how to work around and come up with solutions for policy. And when policy fails us, I know how to be in the streets and actually stand in the gap to help my community.
That's right. And that's why Jasmine Crockett, our Revolution members at a national level, are proud to support your candidacy. On the same day that Joe Biden gives a State of the Union, we want to see you and Greg Casar elected to the United States Congress, because we're going to send the president a message. The Democratic Party is a progressive party. Again, Jasmine, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Aaron, back to you.
All right, thanks, Joseph. Next, I'm very excited to get to announce another endorsement. Bob Libal, who's running for Travis County Commissioner, Precinct 2. Travis County is where Austin's located. This is a pretty big race. Travis is a big county, again, home to Austin, only a few commissioners running the government for that county. But Bob has been a lifelong fighter for immigrant rights, for criminal justice reform. He jumped into this race when he saw an incumbent taking some bad positions and recent votes and knew it was time for a change. At least that's what I understand. Bob, it's great to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on?
Sure. Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be in such great company. I'm, an Our Revolution member and a big fan of the work that Our Revolution does, both here in Texas and around the country. And it's great to be with Greg and Chito, old friends, and with Jasmine and Congressmember Jayapal, who I am a big fans of. As Aaron said, so for folks who aren't from Texas or don't follow Texas politics particularly closely, the Travis County Commissioners Court, right, is the governing body for the county that includes Austin. So it's not actually a court, but it governs a huge swath of policy, including the funding of the entire criminal justice system. A little bit about me, I'm a community organizer. I've been a criminal justice reform and immigrant rights advocate. I was the executive director of a national nonprofit based here in Austin called Grassroots Leadership and Advocacy Organization. I'm also a new dad. You might have seen my son a little bit earlier. We've been kind of passing him back and forth this evening to a 1-year-old named Felix. And I've spent my career fighting powerful interests like the private prison industry and ICE's deportation forces. And I think importantly, as an organizer, what is just as important as pushing progressive policies is how we're building the power and capacity in communities, right? For me, that's been communities that are most impacted by mass incarceration and immigration enforcement systems. But I think that's exactly what Our Revolution is about as well, right? We are only as strong as the organizations that we are building. And I'm running for a few key reasons, as Aaron said. The incumbent in this race has been in politics for 30 years. She's been on the Commissioner's Court for 8 years. And as a criminal justice reform advocate, I was shocked last summer when even here in progressive Austin, Travis County was considering investing $80 million in a new women's jail as part of a master plan, they called it, to invest $600 million in new jails here in Travis County. Now, we don't think that we need huge investments in new jails, right? We think that we need deep investments in housing, in mental health and substance use treatment facilities, in violence interruption programs, like the ones that are being offered and presented by our progressive district attorney here in Travis County, named Jose Garza, and in economic development, environmental services. I also think that for those folks who are familiar with Austin, we are facing an affordability crisis, right? Like a lot of places in the country. And I don't think that we need to be subsidizing unsustainable growth. I don't think that we need tax breaks for mega corporations like Tesla and tech billionaires like Elon Musk. The Travis County Commissioners Court voted to give $14 million in tax breaks to Tesla to move here. What we need instead is a comprehensive housing and affordability plan, right? Deep investments in affordable and public housing so that people like my son and other middle and working class people can envision a future in our community. I also, like Our Revolution, believe that climate change is an existential threat to our community and to communities around the world. We can't afford to nibble around the edges any longer when it comes to addressing it. So we're proposing a Travis County version of the Green New Deal, a generational investment in green housing, transportation, climate mitigation, and climate resiliency policies. If we can have a plan to build $600 million in jails, we should be able to have a plan to build $600 million or $1 billion in a Green New Deal. So I look forward to continuing the conversation. What is as important to me is, as advancing these progressive policy ideas, is the reality that we need to bring new people into the political process, right? We need to bring justice impacted people, people from immigrant communities, renters, young people, and our campaign is striving to do just that, right? We are knocking thousands of doors while our opposition is investing in traditional campaign tactics, right? We are making tens of thousands of texts, right, and phone calls and really talking about not just our campaign, but also the issues that our campaign is highlighting, because we know that in the long term, our victory comes, yes, through these kinds of campaigns. March 1st is our primary date as well, but it also comes through the long-term organizing that groups like Our Revolution and others do throughout the year. So I'm really happy to be here and happy to be a part of this conversation.
That's awesome, Bob. And that is, I think you all could just hear for yourselves why Bob's our candidate in this race. And I just want to re-emphasize, like, building new prisons, tax breaks for Tesla, like, come on, this is Austin, Texas. This is where the state of Texas looks to pioneer progressive policy. This is where the country, one of the kinds of places the country needs to be able to look. So you got to win this, Bob. We got to get you over the top. And we're fighting the exact same kind of campaign you just described. Excited to be in the fight with you. And with that, we've got to get to our most pressing race of the night. Joseph, back over to you.
So the last endorsement we're going to roll out tonight is also the most important. Why? Because Election Day is tomorrow for Chito Vela. Chito is also a member of Our Revolution, and he is running to fill the seat of Greg Casar, who you met earlier. He's running for Congress. So we are building the bench. We are graduating people up, and we're making sure the people who graduate up, we're making sure those seats get filled by bold progressives. Chito was endorsed by Greg, and tonight he is once again being endorsed by us. Chito, we're going to be hitting the phones hard tomorrow. A link is going to be in the chat. We're asking folks to hit the phones and remind people in your district to get out the vote. Chito, what's your closing message to these volunteers? Why should they get on the phones and hustle?
The number one reason I'm running, what we need to do is to make sure that Austin is a welcoming city for working class people, not a playground for the wealthy. It's always been such a vibrant town, such an open town, welcoming to outsiders, where people come and build their lives and make their way, whether it be in music or at the university or whatever. And nowadays, though, it's so expensive and becoming so inaccessible that we're in danger of losing that common touch, and forcing all of our working class people out into the suburbs because housing and transportation are becoming so difficult. So I want to make those investments in housing infrastructure, in transportation infrastructure. Austin just passed a light rail line down a major corridor, which is going to be beautiful. And I really want to lead on that, helping transform the city, reducing our carbon footprint, and enabling the types of housing and transportation investments that make lives easier for working class people, for bartenders that work downtown, for waiters that work downtown, for people that need to move around. That's what we need to do, and that's what I'm going to fight for on city council, and that's why I need Our Revolution support. I know y'all from the Bernie days, I was the 2016 campaign, the 2020, the working class message, the fight for the working class people has always been that focus, and that's what was so appealing to me, and I know that's what's been so appealing to so many people here in Austin, Texas, and it's just such a pleasure to be here with y'all. And I gotta say, I know these candidates very well, and so I gotta kind of do a little roll call and just give them all shout outs. Jasmine Crockett, I do not know personally, but I worked as I'm an attorney. I'm a criminal defense and immigration attorney, but before that, I was a general counsel to a Democratic state rep in the Texas House for 4 years, and I still have a lot of friends in the Texas House, and they were just bragging on Jasmine Crockett in the Texas legislature this last year. And everybody was talking about how she was really one of the most talented and up and coming members. And we were so excited when she announced for Congress, and I'm with her 100%. Greg Casar and I go back to where he was an organizer with Workers Defense Project. I was on the board. I was a board chair at the time. I remember when he ran for council in 2014. And we got along right away. Clearly, he had the talent, the skill, and I was with him on city council, and it's just so exciting and motivating to see him moving up to Congress. I think he's just going to be an absolutely excellent congressman, and I'm supporting it, and I'm excited to see him win. And Bob and I guess I'm an immigration defense attorney. I'm in and out of county jails and immigration detention centers. I've been doing that for a decade plus. And I would always call Bob, we were always talking about the conditions and legal access for the clients and those kinds of just core due process issues and core, right to counsel issues that Bob's organization, Grassroots Leadership, fought for many, many years. I was there with them fighting on those types of issues. So it's just such an honor for me personally to be here on a panel with these folks, all of who I know. It's exciting for Texas. I don't want to, another person, I got to throw another name out there, Jessica Cisneros. I'm originally from Laredo, Texas. My family has deep roots there, and we're all very excited for her there. There's some real grassroots organizing going on in Laredo, Texas around the border wall that was proposed that we've successfully fought off, and using the river as a resource for the city instead of some kind of like war zone place. And there's some real exciting things going on in Laredo, and I think that Jessica is catching that wave just at the right time. So I'm just so excited for all the Our Revolution candidates, myself included. I'm on the ballot tomorrow. And I need y'all's help. We're doing great. Last week, we had probably about 20 volunteers. We knocked about 1,200 doors. This past weekend, we did another 1,500 doors. But we got to get that push out. We've got to get that grassroots working class vote out. We're knocking on apartments. We're doing everything we can, and your members can help. I know it's a unique race. There's nothing else going on, so we could really use your help tomorrow, turning out votes. 1,800 votes only in early voting. We're expecting maybe 1,500, maybe another 1,800 tomorrow. So, I mean, this is a race where you can make an impact, where you can get an Our Revolution member, a fighter for the working class, a fighter for criminal justice reform onto Austin City Council. Greg was great. I'm running for his seat. He's passing the baton. I'm ready to pick it up and run with it. Help me out, Our Revolution.
Chito, we are there. We're going to be there tomorrow on election day, not just cheering you on. We're going to be on the phones wherever you are, members around the country, whether you're in Texas, whether you're in New York, you can join our virtual phone bank. We have a list of over 1,400 people that we can call and get out to vote in Chito's district. The link is in the chat. It's going to be at 10 Central, 11 Eastern, wherever you are, 1 hour. Let's get out the vote and put Chito on City Council. Thank you, brother. Aaron, back to you.
Well, thanks so much to all of our candidates tonight. What an exciting night for Our Revolution in Texas and for Our Revolution nationally, kicking off the 2022 midterm election year. We just have a couple quick announcements before we close out here. First, if we only can do this work because of our members, because of small donors. Sign up today if you're not already a movement builder, like all these great candidates tonight. Join us. So that link will get dropped in the chat. And a couple of calls coming up. Joseph.
So one of the first calls you can join is tomorrow, where Our Revolution Maryland is getting ready for the General Assembly. They've got an all-star lineup of delegates, including Sheila Ruth, who is a chair of Our Revolution Baltimore. If you're interested in learning about progressive policies that are moving in Annapolis, sign up for Maryland's town hall tomorrow.
And as I mentioned before, we're training folks to file complaints with their election officials to keep insurrectionists off the ballot where they belong. Cawthorn, Bober, Green, others can't be allowed to run for re-election after what happened on January 6th. Sign up for the training. That's Wednesday. The link is going to be in the chat. And I just want to close out this meeting, as we always do, by asking you, when we organize, what happens?
We win.
When we organize,
We
win.
win.
One last time, when we organize.
We win.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.